Okay, we're recording. Cool. Hi, this is the exam review for fall 2023. Gabriella just asked, do you know how much free response is worth on the test? Usually free response is about 30 to 40% of the exam, but it's only 3 questions, whereas the multiple choice, there's about 30 usually, and they make up about 60 to 70% of the points on the exam. So, I mean, they're less weighted by question, but ultimately, most people I've seen tend to lose most points on the multiple choice, probably because I don't know, they're either stressing and rushing, or like the multiple choice can be like just a little bit off, and you may just choose the very slightly wrong thing, and that's like 1, 2, 3 points down the drain. Each question for multiple choice, they're not evenly, like each question is not exactly the same. They're like 1, 2, or 3 points, but they'll add up to 70. Yeah, so I guess now that we're starting, Songwoo, did you have any like particular question about the partial credit and free response questions? If I put good comment that described my thought process, like what code to use, would that count for partial credit as well? Technically, personally, if students write a comment with like a paragraph of their thoughts on how to solve the problem, I'm not going to grade that as code because it doesn't like look like code, right? So let me screen share. And I think most PTs kind of do the same because it just doesn't look like code, right? Like it's hard to grade when it's not particularly code. Let me open chat. The index function. Honestly, I don't know the index function, but I can look it up and explain it. Let's see. So you guys can see my screen? Yes? I think yes. Because I clicked the screen share. So, partial credit, about partial credit. In the exam 1 information tab in the multi-section, there's this sample rubric. So it gives the problem. Let me zoom in. It gives the problem. I think this was a genuine problem on a this either used to be a lab problem or this used to be an exam problem. I don't remember. But Partial numbers, and then there's like this one possible solution. There's a lot of ways to do this. But then in the rubric, it says like all these things with each point. So a good way to do a problem is to read through. It says Harshad numbers are integers that are divisible by the sum of their digits with no remainder. For example, 18 is a Harshad number because 18 is evenly divided by 1 plus 8. Type a program in the box below that finds and prints all Harshad numbers between 1 and 99 inclusive. Have your program also print the total number of Harshad numbers found. Use 4 spaces in place of 1 tab. You have to do this for all your free response because Canvas doesn't register a tab, so this is always true. You do not have to use any special output formatting. Don't use an IDE, and don't forget to comment. So if you can see here, you can see here, it's zoomed out again. Based on the problem, it says, have your program print the total number of Harshad numbers found. So that's just what the end is, right? You know the output is going to be something like this, and then there are 32 Harshad numbers between blah, blah, blah. They'll always show you what an example output looks like on your exam, on all your FRQ, just like they have done on the quizzes. I don't know if you've noticed, but they always give you an example of what the output should look like, along with your labs. So you just got to do, there are this is already being recorded. It's going to be on YouTube later. So we know we need an output statement. that includes a variable for how many Harshad numbers there are. Just with this, you get correct print statement for total count. That's 1 point. That's 10% of the FRQ, which is not a lot, but I mean these things add up. You also know that you probably need a for loop, right? Because you have to iterate through numbers between 1 and 99 inclusive. So you have to do for loop. And I did for I in range 1 to 100 because the range function will give me 1 to 99 with this input. And just with correct loop structure, making sure that it loops over everything that you need and the syntax is close enough, it doesn't need to be perfect. And also the out statement, you get 4 points. That's almost half of all the FRQ points for this particular problem. I think I graded this one actually. But yeah, to answer your question, Songwoo, I would not recommend like typing out in comments your entire thought process. I would recommend typing out some of it, like iterate over range of numbers 1 to 99. And then in here, get first digit. And then here, like get second digit. And then down here, divide. And then check the remainder, right? I wouldn't recommend doing everything, but I would recommend maybe like key parts, filling out the comments so that way we know what we need. And then check for remainder. If r equals 0, print the number. Right. The syntax doesn't have to be really good because when PTs are grading the free response, we're not going to be copying and pasting your code into an IDE, most likely, because that's a lot of work because you have to reformat it from Canvas to whatever IDE the PT is using. So you don't have to worry too much about content or about syntax, but definitely just getting the logic right. So we know if r equals 0, print the number. So we can just kind of skip to that. If r equals 0, see, if I forgot this on the exam, I'd probably still get full credit. If you got points off for doing this, I would talk to the PT that graded it and fight for those points back, or I would talk to the professor and get those points back somehow, because we're specifically told to ignore basic context errors, syntax errors, not context. Okay, so if r equals 0, print I, and then I'm going to do this thing end equals. So what the end equals does is print normally ends in a new line, right? So if I printed something after this, this would be on a new line in the terminal. By doing this end, it just overwrites what the new line will be. So you can put anything in here. You can put the arrows like you have in the, what is it? Cars. You can do this and it won't go to a new line. Or you can just make it empty, or you can do a space, or you can do comma space, you can do whatever. But basically anything that prints after this print will just be empty. I'm gonna do a space. And then here I'm gonna do a new line because I don't want this print statement to print right after this. Let's see. So Harshad numbers. I can't look at the rubric. That's illegal. I'm just gonna do this one. I know you guys have the solution right here, but I'm not looking at it. It's hidden to me. Just pretend it's hidden. Get first digit. So I guess if we want, I guess we should handle if it's less than 10 separately because I want to get the digits. So if it's less than 10, they should all be Harshad numbers because every single number is divisible by itself. So if I is less than 10, then we're just going to print it because I don't even need to check if it's a Harshad number. So then everything else I'm going to put in an else because this is where we actually need to do the logic. Does that make sense? Why I'm like doing that? Okay. So now that we want to get the first digit, there's a few ways to do this. I think the practice example solution does like integer division and the modulo division to get the digits. I'm not gonna lie, it's been a long time since I've done that. I took this class 4 years ago, so I know I PT for it, but that doesn't mean I have relearned the language like you guys are learning it. It just means I grade and know how to Google well. But since I've been helping a lot of people with Leet Speak and Pig Latin and a bunch of string manipulation and Capricar's string manipulation, I'm going to use string manipulation to get this instead of modulo and integer division. So that's what I'm most familiar with. I'll be able to answer it the fastest that way. And that's what we're going to do. It's a string. E1 is going to be digit 1. E2 is going to be digit 2. And we know there's not going to be more than 2 digits because we're only doing 1 through 99. We're not doing 100 or up because range excludes this 100 at the end. Then we're going to divide. So then we're going to do I back into an int. And R equals I modulo E1 plus D2. That was supposed to be open. Cool. Does this make sense? And then we need to count. So up here we're going to do count equals 0. And then in here, count plus equals 1. And then down here, count plus equals 1. Okay, so someone asked me, why did I use int float at I? I did this because when you convert, oh my gosh, I don't even know. I was taught 4 years ago in Python version like 3.4 or something, or is 2, not 2, 3 less than whatever you guys learned. You guys are learning 3.9 in class. I learned a version lower than that because 3.9 was not out yet, and a few other versions were also not out yet. When I was a freshman, I was taught if you had a string, you always wanted to convert it to a float first before an integer. Only because of like very small specific cases could really mess you up. So if, for instance, if the string was like 1 point, like a float, right? If it was like a float, you couldn't convert this directly to an integer, even if you did want just the 1. And so I was always taught to just convert it to a float first, because if you convert it directly to an int, sometimes it will give you an error. I'm pretty sure you still have to do that because I graded a quiz earlier this semester and I think they wanted. No, I don't think you'll get points off if you don't do this. You don't have to do this, but I think for code purposes, it's a lot better because Python has some inherent flaws as a language. But yeah, that's why I did that. That's why I did that. I don't think you have to do that, but it's a habit that I've grown into and that I am accustomed to, so I always do it. Could you break down finding the remainder bit? Okay. I do have to convert D1 and D2 back to ints. You're so right. I messed up. Thank you for catching that, Amar. So, could I break down finding the remainder? Did you get stuck at this part up here or this R part down here, line 16? Nora. Okay, so I have digit 1, I have digit 2, and I just add them together, right? 1 plus 8, so this will equal 9. And if I is 18 at this time, 18 modulo 1 plus 8 should be 0, because the modulo, remember, if we have like 7 modulo 2, that always gives the remainder instead of the actual division. So that's just what the modulo function does. So that's equal to 1 because it's an odd number. So everything that's an odd number modulo 2 is always going to leave a 1. So just as a tip, modulo 2 is a really good way to sort even number from odd numbers. Okay, hi Sai. Shit, wrong name. How is I at 0 calling the first digit if I is a string? So you can't, the difference between strings and lists is that lists are mutable, so they're able to be changed, but strings are not. So if I had a string, I wouldn't be able to reassign. So I wouldn't be able to do I at 0 equals a new digit. Like I wouldn't be able to overwrite the string like that, but I can pull individual characters out of the string and use those as I need, which is what I did for D1 and D2. So this will only pull the first character in the string because it's like kind of like a list. The square brackets are just like an indexing method, not necessarily used specifically only for lists because you use them on dictionaries as well. And you can use them for pulling tuple values as well, I believe. But that is why D1 equals I at 0 should pull. I mean, we haven't tested it, so we don't know for sure. Let's see. Yes, if I was hello, then I at 0 would be H. It just pulled each character by the same index that a list would. But instead of each item being whatever variable we wanted it to be, it would just be the single character. And then this person says, I still don't understand why you had to initially convert I into a string variable. So I did that because I wanted to be able to pull each digit in a way that I knew how and a way that I knew I could do quickly. So you converted it to a string to get the D1 equals I at 0 and D2 equals I at 1. If this was an integer, like if I didn't do this, I wouldn't be able like to do this. This wouldn't work. So I guess let's run this now. You'll be able to see int object is not subscriptable right here. D1 at I at 0, I can't do that. But if I had I equals str at I and I ran this, there are 32 Harshad numbers between 1 and 99. And that's the right output. There's 32. So that's why I converted it to a string. You could do what, oh, do you have a question about that? Anyways, I'm gonna ignore that for now. You could do that with, you could do the problem using their method where they take the tens and they do num integer division 10 and ones equals num modulo division 10. You could do this. I just didn't because honestly, I can't lie, I forgot which one was which. And I probably could have figured it out, but that would have taken me more time than doing a method that I already knew how to do that I knew would work. I is every iteration number that's double digits. It's actually just every number between 1 and 99. Just up here in this if statement, this is where we handle 1 through 9. And then down here in this else, this is where I handle 10 through 99. Is it necessary to first convert to a float before converting to an integer? I don't think it's necessary all the time. Maybe in some very specific cases it's necessary, but we wouldn't be giving you those cases in Engineering 102 Exam 1. So don't worry about it. Do what you've been doing. I don't want to spread misinformation. In case I just do it because I am built like that. I don't know. Yeah, but we can see this problem was done. I thought out what I needed to do. I needed to iterate over the range. If you don't specifically remember like how to do the range, just, come up with your best guess. Also, Andrew said earlier, I thought we gave up to half credit for answers written in English pseudocode or non-Python code. I'm not gonna lie, I personally have not in the past. If someone gave me an answer that was just all one paragraph, I would read it, but like I didn't really give credit. I would give credit if it was a comment. I would give credit that a comment was written. But I would say just try your best to do pseudocode and don't block it out by comments. Just try your best. Even if you know it won't run, we're not actually running this in a 90E, so don't worry about that. Do we need to re-put the line count 1 plus, even though it's written on line 7? Yes, you do need to repeat that because I have this if statement to handle cases where there's only one digit. Right, if I is less than 10, we're just printing it because we know it's going to be a Harshad number. We know it's going to be like 9 divided by 9 is equals 1, and the remainder is going to be 0 every single time. For all of like 7 divided by 7, remainder is always going to be 0. 8 divided by 8, remainder is always going to be 0. So I just printed all of them and I just added the counts there. But then when we don't have a single digit and we're in this else block, we're not even going to be like iterating through this. And there's other numbers that are not 1 through 9 that are Harshad numbers, which is why I have this count here. So in here, we're actually checking if it's a Harshad number, and we're just printing it and adding to the count. So both of them do need to be there because both counts are handling two different cases, where both cases could have a Harshad number, but in the second case, there could also not be a Harshad number. Yes. Get rid of this. Okay. I don't think there's any more questions. If you look in, I'm going to keep talking about writing pseudocode for your free response. I really, really recommend, even if you don't really understand what you're doing, for the else statement. Why? Oh, I mean, I just reassign I to the string so that way I can get each digit, right? If I is like 95, then D1 by doing I at 0, then that's just pulling the first character from the string, which is going to be 9 in this case. And then if I do I at 1, that second character is going to be 5. And I can only do this if I is a string. If I kept it as an integer, I would not have been able to do that. I just did that so that way I could just easily access the digits without really having to think about it. I believe you went over this before, but can we still score points for small things like including print statements and having correct structures, even if the code does not work properly? Yes, exactly. This is what I'm trying to emphasize. You can score a lot of points, even if your code completely does not work, because all you need to do is have the loop structure that's right. We have a loop structure, and we have one relevant comment. This is relevant. I think they added relevant later, because usually I always just see at least one comment, and even if it's the stupidest comment ever, I always give credit. Correct print statement for total count, and then correct print statement for harshed numbers. So even if your harshed number calculation is incorrect, if you have the print statement there, that will print every single harshed number, even though it's not actually a harshed number, that counts towards your points. They separate these rubrics so that way each section is obtainable even without depending on another section, usually. Sometimes they're poorly written, the rubrics, and sometimes they depend on another part being correct, but like in this case, it's not really there. Correct conditional structure, like you just have like just one conditional structure that shows like even if you don't even have this calculation in line 20 correct, if you just show that you're trying to get the remainder in line 20 and you're checking that it's 0, that's full points. If you do everything but the calculations, here, this initialize and update variable to count how many numbers are found. That's just count here. And it updates and it updates. And even if it's not right, you get this 1 point. So if you do everything but the actual calculation right, then that's literally 9 out of 10 points. That's a 90%. That's like a lot of points. Okay, this person asks, why do you float I before int? Yeah, I've gotten this question a lot. I think I've already explained it, but this is just something that I was taught to do when I was a freshman, because if a string has a decimal place, then it may not convert to an integer correctly. So I guess as an example, let me just try and prove it. Well, we need to be able to define functions for the exam. That's a good question. Let me check. Python review instructions. It's not in instructions. Calling functions. Nope, you don't need to be able to define it. You just need to be able to call them. Defining them may be helpful, but you do not need to know how to do that for the exam. This rubric is specific to the harshed question, but most of the rubrics are built kind of the same. So if something needs a loop, they'll say correct loop structure. If something needs to be counted, they'll say accounts for like counting up this thing. If they know something needs an if statement, they're gonna put that in the rubric. So if you read through the problem carefully, you're gonna be able to find out what core components you can use to get certain parts of the code working. About functions, I'm still not sure what calling a function does. So I'll get to that soon. Let me answer the float int thing once and for all. So if I have example, we're just gonna do x equals, that's gonna be 1.000, and then we're gonna do int x. I'm pretty sure this is an example where it would not work. Yeah, okay, so because example's a string with a decimal place and numbers after the decimal, it's not able to convert directly to an integer, even though you know it should. So if you do a float first, it should work. We won't get an error. And there's no error. This thing runs. So that's why I do float int. This is like a very specific case that won't happen all the time. This is just why I do it and why I consistently do it, just in case something like that happens. Okay. So each question. No, you will not be able to see any of the rubrics on the exam. For your exam, you will only see this problem and probably the hints and also the output. You won't be able to see the possible solution, and you won't be able to see the rubric or the notes. You will only see the problem, hint, maybe some hints. There may not be hints for whatever problem you're given. And also you will always be given an example output that you can base output print statements on. Okay. Next question. About functions, I'm still not sure what calling a function does. So how do I explain this? Okay, see this float and with the parentheses around I? That is a function. And that is a function that will just convert whatever variable is in here into a float. So this is an example of calling a function. I think you guys are still not done with kappa cars. I don't think barcode checker is a thing that you guys have. I think barcode checker actually is a problem you have later in the semester, so I'm not going to look at that one. Here. Oh, this is a good one. Okay, so here I have text with a tab, banana, another tab, and a new line, and I do text.strip. So then I print of all fruits, X is my favorite color, is my favorite, right? So if I run this, of all fruits, banana is my favorite. So dot strip is another function that strips text of all its white space. So, but you can also add something in here. You can add a parameter. You can strip B. So now if we run this, it didn't strip B. I'm confused. I don't know how strip works that well. I always have to look them up. But that's because I'm not actually taking the class like you guys are. Anyways, this is an example of calling a function where this is white space, the new line is white space. So if you just do dot strip, then that gets assigned into X. You can call X and it'll print banana normally instead of abnormally like it did the second time that I ran it. So that's another example of calling a function. I think you can get, oh, good luck. I think you can get through this without really, I'm trying to think right now, without calling a lot of functions, because personally when I solve problems, I don't really think I call that many functions because I always forget the specific parameters and specific ways that they work. But if you've been doing the labs, you should have some exposure with functions like dot sort and stuff like that. Max is also another one. So if I had a list, that was like all these different numbers, we can print max of L. So this is calling another function. We're going to print the maximum number in this list. Now it does that. Min also works. So there's a few examples of calling some functions. Even print is a function that you're technically calling because you type it out. You have the parentheses, then you give it the parameters that you want it to take. The parameter in this case is just min parentheses L. Yeah, you're taking the exam during normal class hours. I'm gonna move on to actually like practice problems because we've not been doing that. And it's 6:36. The phone number practice problem, yeah, that's down here, I think, too. Here it is. Okay. And use sort or max on 2D lists. I don't think they work on 2D lists. I mean, we can find out. So if we have L equals I'm gonna do 3. Okay, I'm pretty sure they don't work on 2D lists. I think you would need to access particular lists within lists to be able to do that. So if we just keep this. Okay, it does work, but it gives you the max list within the list. I don't think this is how you probably expected it to work, but this is how it does work. I don't know which parameter it's accessing to be able to sort it. Okay, I'm gonna guess if we change this to 1, it's gonna print 3311 now, which it does. So it just takes the first parameter of each list within the list and sorts it based on that. So could be helpful in some cases, but not all. Let me do the phone problem though, because that was asked first. And then after that, I'll do the birthday one. So a schematic for converting phone note letters to digits mapping is shown in the image below. Write a Python program that prompts the user to enter a 10-character phone number in this format. Your program should replace the last 7 alphabetic characters by their equivalent digits and display the entered phone number in this format. For example, if the user enters this, your program output would be this is equivalent to this. So we're just going to add that print statement at the end. I'm going to call it in num is equivalent to out num. And that's what I'm going to call it. You may assume that the last 7 characters are alphabetic letters from A through Z. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a key. I think that would be super helpful. And I'm going to assign each key index. I think this would be easiest with a dictionary, but I really don't want to do that. So I think there's a few ways you could approach this. I mean, you could do it all manually and just convert. I think we might do that. I think we're just going to do a for loop. After we do an input, we need to do an input. In num equals input enter your phone number. Okay, so they'll enter it. And then within num, we now have a string that looks like, we'll just use 800 go FedEx. We're gonna do that. So those first 4 characters we know is always going to be the same. So we can do out num equals in num, and then from there to index 4. So index 4 is actually this fifth letter. This is actually G, but it's exclusive, just like the range function. So it's only picking up 0, 1, 2, and 3. And so now if we print out num, I'm going to show you. It prints just the first 4 characters. So we have some of outnum, all of innum, and now I need to get the rest of outnum from innum. So what I'm thinking that would be helpful is a for loop. So we can just do for I in. Okay, so I always do for I in range, length, in num, but we're gonna do it from length of 4 and on. So now this first number, just like in the range function, is inclusive. Like if you remember here, it counted 1, but it did not count 100. So just like that, it counts 4 and then it goes all the way to the end. That's what the colon does. From here, we start at the very beginning, that's what the colon does, and stops right before 4. So it's the opposite. Now for I in range, length, in num, we're gonna do, it would not be 5 because the hyphen would not be double printed. In this case, the hyphen is actually 3. So that's because this 4 here is exclusive. So we start at 0, 1, 2, 3. There's the hyphen. Index 4 is actually the G, but it's exclusive when we're at the end. Yeah. Okay, cool. We'll pass that. Now, what I think would be helpful is just do, honestly, I'm just thinking 9 if statements because that's probably the easiest. So you could do if in num I in ABC and then ABC out num plus equals 2. Elif in num at I in EEF out num plus equals 3. How did I get out num plus equals 2? So out num plus equals 2, I already have an out num. If you look at this terminal down here, by doing out num equals in num from range 0 to 4, then that is basically just saying outnum is the string for the first 4 characters, and that's what outnum already is. So it's already a string, and at this point, I know I just want to add numbers to the back of the string to fill out the full phone number. Should it be I plus 4 when indexing? It should not be I plus 4 because when I do range length in num, I already accounted for getting rid of the first 3. So it's only looking at this part. Maybe I should have typed it out simpler. Would you have to do them all as separate if statements? I'm planning on doing an elif block, but yeah, that's what I'm planning on doing because I don't want to use a dictionary. It's kind of more cumbersome, but what can you do? So we'll see. DEF. GHI, GHI. GKL, GKL. No. PQRS, PQRS. UV, UV. And then the last one. WXYZ, WXYZ. Instead of adding the number, no, you cannot just replace, instead of adding a number, can you just replace it in the string? You cannot just replace it in the string because strings are immutable. So you can pull values out of them and assign them somewhere else, but you can never just overwrite the value in a string. That's just the way strings are built. That's how they're set up to be in Python. You cannot change a string unless you completely get rid of the string. So if I could overwrite all of innum. I could do innum equals just a completely new string, but what I could not do is I could not do innum at a particular index equal to a new character. I couldn't do this. So if I run this, it'll probably give me an error, but I don't want to. Let me just test this in another one. See, if I run this, it doesn't work. It says type error, string object does not support item assignment. So each individual item in a string is a character, but the type of variable string does not let you change each item within it. That's only lists. Okay, that one's quite answered. Logan or Luke says, what is the difference between using if statements versus elif statements? And another student replied and said, elif will only run if the if statement is false, and an if statement can run if the previous statement if the previous if statement is false. Thank you, Obina. Dictionaries are not on the exam. You don't have to worry about them. Can you make num list into a list and then replace it? In num into a list and then replace it using split? Kind of. So if in num is, we're just gonna manually go FedEx. We can do in num dot split on this character, right? Do I need to reassign that? I don't think I do. No, I do. Right, so now it's 800 go FedEx. You still couldn't replace the G or the O or the F or the E in any individual character because now, for example, in num at 1, because I want to access go FedEx, at 2, I can't reassign that to being a number because inside of the list, this is still a string. You could reassign all of that whole list to a new string. You could do this, and that would work. And let me print it to show. Yeah, so you could do that, but because a string is still inside of the list, it doesn't work. Yeah. 2, 3, 4. A lot of the reviews have said you can't use commands. When did they say that? I'm pretty sure that's like kind of required to be able to do a lot of these things. Alyssa, can you like tell me what review said that?
I'm not exactly sure because I've been to like 7, but in about 3 of them, they were like, "Oh, it would make it too easy. It would be like 3 lines of code, so they probably won't let you like use these."
Okay, for the most part, you will be allowed to use commands like length, max, min, and sort. You'll be able to use whatever functions you've used in your labs, unless they specifically say, do this without using these functions, which is not like super common. You may encounter a problem like that because it may be too easy with max or it may be too easy with min. But for the most part, at an engineering 102 level, you're free to use all of those, unless it's explicitly said that you're not allowed to. Does that help clarify? If you want, I don't know who said that. I need to, maybe they worded it differently and maybe it was misunderstood, but if you want extra clarification, ping Dr. Ritchie in the Discord server. You can at her. She's very helpful. She's very kind. She doesn't mind being pinged. She's not said anything about not wanting to be pinged. And she'll answer your question. And any other PT will probably say the exact same thing that I did. The code is not done, Gabriella. Why are we plus equals 3? Why can't we just set outnum to equals 3? Because I'm just adding to the back of the list. So right now, outnum is just, it's just 800 minus. This is just what outnum is right now. And I just want to add more numbers to the back of it, is what I'm doing right now. And then, yeah, there are some questions that tell you not to use certain ones. Yeah, yes, guys, right. Will the exam have a lot of writing code, or will it mostly be questions? It will mostly be questions. For what is the output? They'll mostly be multiple choice. 30 of them will be multiple choice. 3 of them will be free response. The point distribution will be like 40 to 30% of the grade will be from your free response, and then 60 to 70% of your grade will be from multiple choice. So definitely focus on multiple choice, because that's where most people lose points. I've seen, like, people will get, like, after the exam that gets auto graded by multiple choice, all these people will have like 30s or 40s or like 20s even for their final exam grade. And that can only go up so much because the free response is only worth like 30 points, 40 points. Tips for multiple choice questions, I'll get into that later. For now, I'm going to do this one, and then I'm going to do the birthday one, and then we can go into multiple choice. How would we add? I'm about to do that. Don't worry. I've been answering questions, so I haven't been able to work on this, but 6, 7, 8, 9. So now we're adding all the proper digits in replacement of the letters that they are. How long? Depends on how fast your PTs grade. If you're stressed about it, talk to them in class and ask them to grade faster. Now, we know we want to add a hyphen after a certain character. And we know here, that we want to add it after 3. So we have 0, 1, 2. So now that we've added outnum, so it'll go through all of these first when I is 2, which basically means when I is F, right? In this case, when we're accessing F, I is 2. It'll go through all these, it'll add the appropriate outnum, and then at this point, let me just write it, if I equals 2, outnum looks like 800 dash 463, ideally. So then we want to add our hyphen here. So what I'm doing with this for loop is we have this base string, and I'm slowly building up each digit in what each digit after for what it's supposed to be. Wow, my explanations, my English is really bad. I'm so sorry. We're slowly building up character by character, digit by digit, what the phone number is supposed to be at the end. So we know once I is 2 at this point, then we want to add the hyphen. So that's what this is for. And are there going to be free response questions that ask questions like, what is the difference? No, You won't be asked questions like, what is the difference between a string or a list? That would be a multiple choice question. Or, yeah, that would be a multiple choice question. I already answered that. I didn't read that. Okay, so now we've added the hyphen, and then as we iterate through the rest of the for loop, the rest of the numbers should get filled in appropriately. So if could we just build the full outnum list and use an insert character into the outnum list? Could you clarify what you mean by that a little bit more, because I'm a little bit confused.
So basically, I think there is a function where you can insert a character at a certain index. Could we just do that with the outnum list?
You could do that if outnum was a list, but it's not a list, it's a string. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, because strings are immutable. You can't change anything that's, I guess you can insert stuff in the middle of strings, but you wouldn't be able to like delete that, right? So I'm just building basically on an empty string because I just think that's the easiest way to think about it, I guess. I guess maybe you could do it in a way that you're thinking. If you want to try and do this practice problem with whatever you're thinking, I would highly suggest that you do that because that's just more practice in formatting in various variable types. And wouldn't that last if statement only work for this specific scenario? I mean, it works for this specific question, but this specific question is what we're answering, so that's all we need. I think to answer your question, Ivy, what you're thinking of, or if we just have like out num at here, we can just add it like that probably. But I don't want to say for sure yes, just because I haven't tested it, I guess. Let me get rid of this. And now let's do this. It didn't work. This is so sad. We got 463. It's probably this part that didn't work. It's probably what it's iterating over. Okay, so then we can just do num. And then someone suggested earlier we could do I plus 4. Yeah, I mean I plus 4 down here works, but the problem is, what do we do after that? But we could just do an if statement and break it. That could always work. So we could do I plus 4 here. And then plus 4, I don't want to do the math. Then we can do if I minus 4 equals I. So we're checking if I is I minus 4. Then we're going to break. Because we only need like 4 and on. So once we're past, how do I explain this? I just know that this is going to work, but I don't really know how to explain it that well. So let me just try and run it again while I think of ways to explain it. Okay, see it says string index is out of range, and that's because that's probably when I is equal to something near the later characters. So let me just move this if statement above here, so that way it breaks before trying to access anything. Still says it's out of range. Okay. What is I before it says that? It hits 7. No, why did I do this?
Could you do range for and len and num?
Could you repeat that?
Could you do range 4 to len and num?
I could do that. That would be the much smarter way of doing that, but I think I'm in too deep, so I'm not going to change it at this point, if that's okay. I think I found my problem because I'm comparing I to I when that's stupid. When I really need to be comparing in num to I. 800 minus. Yeah, except then it does this. Why does it add that at the end? How similar is the exam to the practice questions? The exam is probably a little bit easier, I guess. A lot of these practice questions are questions that have been scrapped from being on the exam because they're either too hard or too long, or like most of the time it's because they're too hard. So if you try and just do all of them, you feel pretty confident in being able to like come up with solutions to word problems pretty quickly. I'm about to get there. I think it might be wrong, but I'm just checking. That's 6. So then this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What is going on? This isn't right, but the digits are right. So, I mean, the if statements work, which is good. Idnum only goes until 6. So I guess I'm going to keep 2. And there it goes. That's right. But I don't like any of this. I like Obina? Obina? Am I saying your name properly?
Obina, you were saying it right the first couple
Obina?
times.
Okay, cool. Obina, your solution was much better than mine was. I think we want to start at 4, yes. You're right. Because that's how range works. I don't know why I forgot that's how range works. So, with Obina's solution, we can try it again.
No, I think you actually have to put I equals 6 there.
Yeah, I do need the I plus 4 again. Okay, so Basil, for I plus 4, or I equals 2 plus 4, it should be this, because we want to add a hyphen here, and that's after we have, what is this, 7 characters in outnum, and I will iterate 4, 5, 6. So after it iterates 3 times, we add 3 digits to the end here. At 6, we want to add a hyphen. So that's why I have I equals 2 plus 4. I did log in using my Tamu Zoom account. Why? Oh, Andrew's back. Thank you for answering questions in chat, Andrew. It's getting a little bit overwhelming. So let's try again. 800, go pathetic. Keep mistyping it. And there it goes. So now it's right. This is exactly what we want. True. W. W student, you're gonna get an A. You will get this. Cool. So someone else wanted birthdays. Who wanted birthdays? Are you still here if you wanted birthdays? I just did I == 2 + 4 for my own sake because I didn't want to spend the time figuring out what 2 + 4 was when my Python could do it for me. Too much work. Okay, you're still here somewhere. Cool. Let me find that problem. It's not any of these, and it's not this. Here we go. Is it this one? Write a Python program to take input 5 birthdays from 5 users. So, okay, let me answer this last question about the previous problem just really quickly. I'll get on working on your problem after that. So what does the for in range for length in num check for? So what this will do is it'll iterate from 4 until the length of in num. So in num is 10 characters, I think. So it'll go 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So actually, if length of in num was 10, it would go 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and it would not do 10. It would just go through those numbers. And we're doing that because we want to iterate through those for the sake of adding to outnum. We want to be able to check what these last characters are individually. We want to check for index 5, we want to check index 6, we want to check index 7, we want to check index 8. So that's why we start at 4, and then we go until the end of in num. Does that make sense? Yeah. And then questions like birthdays use dictionaries, but would there be any? No, you would not use any dictionaries. I'm going to solve birthdays without using a dictionary because you are not required to use dictionaries on your exam. But yeah, you're right. Alice starts at 4, goes to the rest, but it goes by index, which is why then I do in num square brackets I, so then I can actually get what the character is and not just the index number. Yeah, I mean, the other review may be helpful. Mine, I think both should be recorded, but I think the chances of mine being recorded and posted are higher than the other guy. So if you want to switch, that's cool with me. I don't know if the other guys are actually like on top of their recordings. They don't have their previous exam review did not have a recording, so the chances of this one having a recording, but mine is being recorded right now, so you can always go back and look at mine, and you can even put it on like 2 times speed. No, they're not on top of their recordings. You can use them for your own convenience in your FRQs if you're confident in how they use for dictionaries. They will not be required to be used for any of your problems, but you can use them if you want. No one's gonna take off points. Recordings are posted in the, Andrew, could you post it? There's a spreadsheet. Okay, write a Python program to take as input 5 birthdays from 5 users. So we're just gonna go B1 equals, oh my God, I think this problem is actually a team lab that I had to do when I was a freshman. That's funny. That's how I know you can do it, because I was able to do this before exam 1 on a team lab. Input without a dictionary, by the way. I did not use dictionaries. It was just a bunch of if statements. Okay. Enter birthday 1. And then 4 and 5. And then 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is probably like 1 or 2 points because we have every single input in a string. Then you probably want to split them. So we're going to reassign them. We're going to do b1 equals b1 dot split, and it'll split on the space, right? So if someone enters above here, July 14th. If someone enters July 14th, then they're going to get, after the split, they're going to get July, comma, 14, and both will be strings. So if this initial one is a string, and they do dot split, that's going to split on this white space here, and they'll get July 14th. So we want to do that for all of them. Can't you just add split at the end? I could add split at the end of each birthday variable. I could do dot split here. This is very doable. I guess I'll do that for these because why not? But, you know, I guess my brain just didn't think like that. It didn't think of that. I'm not really one to try and condense everything into as few lines as possible, but some people are, and that's great for them, and they can do that. I'm just not built like that. Do we not have to put, which parentheses are you talking about? Oh, you don't have to do that in the parentheses because you're calling the variable split. If we look up split, you're not calling the variable, you're calling the function split. We look it up, the split method. You can do a separator parameter, but it's optional. And that's because the default value is just any white space that is a separator. That's just what it defaults to. C defaults to white space. So if you wanted to split on like a number, like 1, then it'll split on 1s, or 1, it'll split by that. But the white space is always the default, so you don't have to actually clarify that you want it to do white space. Yeah, so now that we've done that, you may format the output however you like, including using numbers for the month instead of words. This is a good problem to practice using dictionaries. Okay, Songwoo, you asked for this. Do you want me to try and solve it using a dictionary or no? Because dictionaries are not in the exams. So I don't really want to do it using dictionary, but since you specifically asked for this, if you want me to, I could try. Yes? Okay, well, that's one yes. Oh no, that's a no. I don't know why I read that as yes. Okay, no. Cool. No dictionaries. So, I mean, instead it's just going to be similar to this problem with a bunch of ifs. Maybe a little bit boring, but could do for I in range 5, because I'm just going to iterate through 5 birthdays at once and just change them as I want at once, right? Don't you have to put dot split? I don't have to because I reassign them down here in lines 9 and 11. I don't have to put dot split at the end. Probably would have been better if I did that, but the time complexity is the same no matter what. So it's okay. Actually, no, I guess it's a little bit different. It's probably a little bit faster if I do dot split at the end, but it's okay. Could we use a 2D list in this problem? We could use a 2D list. Yeah, let's make it a 2D list problem. That actually sounds more helpful to you guys. So now we can do birthdays equals in a list B1, B2, B3, B4, and B5. So now we have a 2D list. with this to-do list, we're just gonna go for I in range length days. So now, with this, if we do birthdays at I, this will access B1, then B2, then B3, then B4, then B5, each at a time. The other review is full. Can you remind them to record it? Because that's interesting. I hope they record it. They've been advertising a lot, so I guess it makes sense that their review's full. I don't really advertise. Okay, so you may format. So I'm just gonna format it into like month, like number. I want our output to look like 7/14. Yeah, this is what I'll put format each birthday as. So if we take birthdays at I, we can get the first part of the list by doing another square bracket. So this will give us the month. So we can just do another if statement. I don't really like doing them, but it's fine. And instead of in, I'm going to use the double equals and just do each month. Slowly. February, March, April, May, June, July. The PTs in your class grade your exams. It's not spread out randomly. It's the PTs that you ask for help for in class. So be nice to them. And if you have questions about their grading once grades are out, you can talk to them. They'll be able to show you. And I do square bracket I and then square bracket 0 because birthdays is a 2D list. So it's a list of lists. So birthdays is one big list like this, but then B1, B2, B3, B4, and B5 are each lists that look like this in line 10 in this comment. So when I do I, it just gets B1 or B2 or B3 or B4, but then when I take the 0, it'll take July of B1 or the first month of B2. It'll just take the first element of whatever list we're like further accessing, if that makes sense. July, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, and then another one for December. So if it's January, we're just going to overwrite it. We're just going to change it to 1. And then here, I can't believe it's full. That's crazy. People are stressing for real. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Cool. So after I change the month, the date is still the same because this is the output that I've decided that I want. They say you can format it however you like. So if you want it to be more challenging, you can change it to whatever you want. But then after that, I'm gonna call a function. I'm gonna call the join function. So I'm gonna change B1, and I'm gonna make that not B1. I'm gonna do birthdays at I, and I'm gonna overwrite that. I'm gonna overwrite the whole thing, and I'm gonna make it birthdays at I dot join, and I want them to be joined with a slash. So I'm calling the join function. This is how the join function works. If you have a list, can be anything, can be like, you know, a string. You can take that list. So in this case, birthdays at I will be B1, B2, B3, B4, B5. It'll be either any one of those. And you can join them. And you can join them using a character in between. If this is empty, it's just going to join them. It's just going to smush them together. But I want to put the slash there, so that way they join with a slash in between. And then you have this empty string here, because you're just adding this stuff onto the back of the empty string. So this is how the join function works. We could not write the slash inside of the first one, because this stuff is just being added to the back, basically. I'm pretty sure that's how this works. So using that, hopefully, I mean, let's just print birthdays after that. Ah, shit. May 2, May 4, May 5. Okay, string has no attribute. Birthdays. Shit, how does the join function work again? I've seen students use it. I've personally never used it. Let's just copy and paste this. Okay, I think you're right. Johanna, I think you're right. I think I was wrong. I think it needs to go in here. This is so sad. The birthday one. May 1. May 2. May 3. May 4. May 5. Okay. Let's see. String has no attribute. Birthdays. Okay. Fuck it. I don't know how to use join. I'm not going to use join. I'm just going to print it, because it can be whatever I want it to be. Andrew told me to watch my language, but you guys are all adults, I think. Actually, some of you may be minors, because some of you may have skipped a grade, but that's okay. I'm going to print birthdays at I at 0, and then I'm going to add the slash, and then I'm going to add birthdays at I at 1, and then going to end on a space, and that's what's going to happen. A lot of your problems, I mean, I guess you already know this, but a lot of them are just using a bunch of if statements and loops, and like looping over things that you need to loop over, and then using if statements to access what you need from them. But now, see, It's all formatted into the numbers, and you could have done this with a dictionary, and it probably would have been a little bit easier, to be honest. How do we order the birthdays? Okay, that's a good question. I guess we can sort them by month up here. So I can do that in a different loop. I can do for I in range length in range 5. We're just gonna go in 5. I'm gonna comment this out. This doesn't exist. And now I'm gonna make birthdays an empty list. So we can do do you explain how you got line 40? Fuck. I think this one was this line 40 when before I typed more. Yes, okay, cool. So I mean, I just got that by accessing each thing. I don't think I want to do this actually. I've changed my mind. There we go. And I'm just gonna change these to the actual numbers because it will be easier to sort. That way. So now, is there a difference between join and append? Join is like, I'm pretty sure it only works on strings. Join all items in a tuple, or you can use a list, into a string. So append adds an item to the back of the list, and then join will smush everything in the list together. But I don't know how to use it that well, evidently, because it didn't work. So practice it yourself. You don't always need to use join to like get what you want in Python. You can always do it a different way, which is what I do. I always do it a different way because I've never needed to use join. Let's see. So now that these are all numbers, we can just go birthdays at I at 1. So now we're accessing the second part, the date part, and I'm just going to change that into an int. Now that everything's an int, we can just order it. Probably in another for loop, to be honest. So my thought process, I need to sort by month first. So for I in range length birthdays, it won't be this long on the exam. Andrew said, is Andrew still here? Andrew, are you still here? Okay, Andrew said that they're about the same, but he's wrong. Okay, I said earlier that a lot of these practice problems are scrapped exam problems, and they were scrapped for a reason. They were scrapped because they were too long or too hard or whatever. Okay, I didn't see that. But also, I would like you to know that specifically this particular problem, number 2, used to be a lab problem because I remember writing this with my lab groupmates. It was a team lab. So stuff like that are on your team labs are longer and more complicated, which is why they're team labs and you're not expected to be able to answer them individually within time frame. I think this one is moderately harder than what you'll see on an exam, personally, especially without the use of a dictionary. this particular case. And also, I wouldn't say I'm doing it the most efficiently either. But that's okay. It doesn't need to be the most efficient. This one will definitely not be on the exam, so don't worry about this one being on the exam. It will definitely not be there. If it's a practice problem, it's definitely not on the exam. Okay, now for I in range length birthdays, I want to sort by month. So we can go, I'm going to get a temporary value and be an empty list. If I'm going to start at 1. So if birthdays at I minus 1 at 0, so just the month of the very first one, is greater than birthdays at I at 0. So we're checking the month of the very first element, and then the month of the very next element. If the first month is bigger, then it's probably like a later month, and then we can just birthdays at I minus 1 equals temp. I did that wrong, backwards. Temp equals birthdays at I minus 1, and then birthdays at I minus 1 are equal to birthdays at I. So I'm replacing the earlier value with the later one, and then I stored the earlier value in a temporary one, and I can just do birthdays at I equals temp. So now that I've stored this later one, I can just put it back. So I've essentially just swapped their 2 places. That's what I'm doing with this. I guess I could do dot sort, but I don't know how to do dot sort in a 2D list, so this is what I'm doing because this is what I know. Okay, so now that I've swapped the months, then we need a case if they're the same. So elif birthdays, I'm just going to copy paste this. If they're the same, then we want to check if change to 1 if the dates are greater, and if they are, then we're swapping them again. So now that they're all being swapped with their right numbers, so in this if statement, I'm swapping them based on month, and then if the months are the same, I'm swapping them based on dates. Otherwise, I'm just doing nothing and they're staying where they are. And doing this, I just print birthdays. It's not formatted or anything, but it should be in the right order. And I guess I have to do like July 14, July 4, May 8, August 9, and like May 23. So that's wrong. What happened? 7. It swapped some things, but not everything. It's been such a long time since I've done a sorting algorithm. You guys don't need to know sorting algorithms for this. So we could just do dot sort, but I don't know how to do dot sort in a 2D list, which is the problem. Yeah, that's the problem. I'm not sure. If I do birthdays dot at 0 dot sort, that's just gonna sort the first, like, it's just gonna sort B1, which is not what we want. I wonder if we can just do birthdays equals birthdays dot sort. Because I'm gonna say it's not gonna work. Decided not to go into comp sci because of this class. Okay, yeah, no, the sort doesn't work on just that. And if we do what you suggest, that's just gonna sort. I think it has to be like this, actually. Okay, it does sort. I just did the sort function wrong, but it'll sort on month, and then after that, you still do need to sort on. It sorts by day too. Okay, yeah, you could just do birthdays dot sort, and it works. So then you just have to format it after. I didn't know that it would work like that because that's very interesting. I should use sort more often. Yeah, that is kind of a W for Python. Let's see. I think you need to make a new list. Yeah. I don't know how it sorted the day, but it did. Because look, I inputted the later date first, and then when it outputs, the later date is later, and it worked. I don't know if I can explain how that works, to be honest. Can you show the formatting for adding the slashes per month and day? Is it SEP? I don't know what SEP is, so let me look that up. Oh, this is just code for disabling soft space. Okay, separator is just inside of a print statement. So I guess we could do that. So we could do for I in range length birthdays. Then you can do print birthdays at 0, and then comma birthdays at at 1, and then separate them slash, and then I would say we just don't end on a new line as well. We just end between spaces, comma space, right? But I don't want to end all of them like that, so let's just end on a space. So now if we run July 14, July 4, May 7, that's 9, May 23. That's all organized and sorted and also formatted. So that is a good way to do this problem. Oh my god, I totally didn't read chronological order. That was the hard part that you guys were probably confused about, but dot sort works once you convert them all into integers. Cool. Let's see. Auto-graded style problems. I think the hardest auto-graded style problem that is not in any of these, I'm going to give you guys because it's just a style. There's no guarantee that any of them will be on the exam. but I think they're the most difficult because they're just really intimidating to read. Well, these are nice problems. So the ones that I see that I think are especially difficult for students just because they're super long are like, what code gives this output with a given input? So say, I can't even come up with an example. I mean, they're kind of difficult, but what they are is like, it'll just be something like this, not like this one. So if the input is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the output is 1, 4, 3, 16, 5, they'll say, which code snippet like does this output for the input? And they'll give you like long code snippets, and there'll be like a lot of them. There'll be like 4, right? Because it's multiple choice. And they'll be mostly the same, but then like one line or one little like thing in the for loop or whatever will be slightly different, and that'll mess everything up. So actually I'm gonna do 6. So if we do I mean, they'll just give you a bunch of things. So I think the right answer would be like for I in range length. I need to make this real. Range length L. We're gonna start at 0. I'm gonna specify 0 specifically this time, and then we're gonna jump every 2. So it starts at 1, not 0, and then it's gonna jump to every other thing. And then we're gonna go L equals L to the power of 2. So then if we print L at the end, it should look like what I predicted the output to be. Unsupported operand types. L at I. Small mistake. Int object is not subscriptable. L at I. There we go. That's finally right. So now we have 1, 4, 3, 16, 536, right? Just like what I predicted it to be. But what they'll do in this case, or if I changed it to 1, 2, 9, 4, 25, 6, then that means we start at 0, right? But what they'll do is they'll get rid of this, they'll hide this, right? Like now there's only 2 parameters in range, and if you run it, it's going to give you something completely different. This will be like one option for the output, or for the code snippet that they want you to have. There will be something like super small, like instead of like to the power of, they'll have just ×2, and that's still not right? Like that still gives the incorrect output. Or they'll do, I don't know, just some really like small changes that you can't really tell immediately what they are just by like looking at each code snippet. And I don't know, I find the students really struggle the most on those because it's kind of intimidating to spend a lot of time reading every single code snippet. So since they're all gonna look mostly the same, just really look for what the key differences are and to see if everything is properly formatted, because that's how you'll be able to like find the answer the quickest, in my opinion. Just as a tip for doing the multiple choice, I think those are the hardest types. Could you explain what the placements of 0, length 2, mean in range. Okay, so in range, you can do, there's a lot of different, I wonder if it's in here. Cheat sheet, lists, F strings, loops. Kind of, not really. Damn, I wish Archer put it in here now. But range has a lot of different options. So if I just did range 5, this would give me 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. If I did range 4, 9, this would give me 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You cannot use that cheat sheet on the exam. Sorry. Honestly, I don't even know if it's that helpful, to be honest. I guess it could be for small things, but it doesn't even have the range stuff. The range stuff is important. So when you have one parameter in the range function, it starts at 0 always, and it goes to whatever number minus 1. When you have two parameters, it gives you a starting point and an ending point, and it'll give you everything in between except 1 minus the last number, right? But when you have three parameters, like what I have here, range 2, 9, 2, this will give you, it'll start at the first number, it'll go 2, and then instead of the next number, 3, it'll do plus 2. So it'll do 4, 6, 8. And then it'll never reach 9 or anything, right? Like 2, 4, 6, 8, it'll go to that. You can also use this. So this is basically what it's changing by. How many? 3 FRQ on the exam. So this is kind of helpful because if you want to count backwards, you could do range 10, 2, and you could even do -1, right? So then that will go 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, right? So it could be helpful like that. Why specify the 0 at the beginning? Because if I don't have that 0, then the range only sees 2 inputs. So it'll think it has to do this, when really we want to specify what we're jumping by. So I specify that 0, so that way range has 3 inputs, and it knows to skip by 2 each time. Does that make sense? How many where you have to predict? That's kind of, I mean, the multiple choice are all like from a big bank of questions on like the professor's end that they can see. So it's randomly given to you for like just randomly assigned, and then like the total adds up to whatever. So whatever multiple choice you have, your neighbor or whoever else, your friend, whatever, they're not going to have, because there's just so many multiple choice question possibilities that you could get. I don't know how many of the code output ones you would have, but it is a little bit randomized and up to chance. Andrew, it's like 30 multiple choice and 3 FRQ. In list L, does -3, 5 print 4 and 5? I don't think it does. I think just if you wanted to print 4 and 5, it would be just 3:5. So print L 3:5. You wouldn't need the negative in there. The negative is just when you would start like counting backwards. See? It just tells you start at 3, end before 5. Does that make sense, Basil?
Yeah, I just see like in some of the multiple choice they include negatives to like try and trick you.
Yes, they do like to include negatives in stuff like this to try and trick you. So in this case, maybe like -1, -2, -3 to what, -1, -2. -1 here. This might print 4 and 5 as well. It does, right? So this is where they could include negatives to try and trick you. Yeah, splicing like this is also very common, very commonly something that is done in like the what code gives this output type of question that I was talking about with this. So I really recommend just like be careful. I know there's a lot of questions, but don't, I don't know. It's kind of hard to balance. Like can't be too slow, but you can't be too fast. How do negatives works when it is reading the list? Negatives count backwards, right? So this will go 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. But then when doing stuff like this, it'll go, this is -1, this is -2, this is -3, this is -4. Does that help, Mario? Can you explain print? Okay, you got it, Grayson. Yeah, cool. This is just like really small technicalities that are really easy to forget. I know you guys learned this. If you look in your lecture slides, especially when covering lists for the first time, this is there. It's all in there. But really small things like this that you just are really easy to forget, you don't really practice them that much in like your labs and stuff, they more than likely or not will be somewhat tested. Dictionaries are not an exam. So that's just something to really keep in mind, because could be a lot of problems like that, especially in the multiple choice. Can we have a positive and negative value for range? Yes, you can have a positive and negative value for range. So if I do -4 here, then this will go -4, -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you can do a negative like that. And that's what it should end up. I really wish he put that in here, but it's kind of too late to change now. I should have suggested it earlier. I didn't really look at his document when he was sending it out. I mean, he kind of does it here, just without, he does list and string slicing here. So look, you can see exactly how he does it. So this works on lists and on strings. The only thing to keep in mind is if you do something like this with a string, you just can't overwrite what it is. But I think you can add stuff in there. Yes. I mean, definitely look over his cheat sheet. It's in your multi-section, exam 1 information, exam 1 cheat sheet. This was made by a PT named Archer, and he's super smart. He gives you reminders on all of this stuff. Definitely look over this, especially for you with the 8 a.m. exam tomorrow. I would spend like 10 minutes in the morning outside of your exam room looking over this image, just refreshing yourself on what stuff is. The I and J in input. Where is this? Input. Input is over here, isn't it? Is input. Would minus print backwards. It would print nothing, because lists need to be specified from beginning to end. But maybe if you do this, if you add a third one, it might print backwards. It does. So if you have this third one, that tells you what to increment by. Just like ranged works. It just works exactly the same as this. But otherwise it's going to increment positively, so you need to have the smaller number in the beginning and the larger number in the second spot. I have seen some use for I, some use for J. What is the difference? I is just a variable that is created locally within the for loop. This could literally be anything, and I just have to change it in here as needed. Conventionally, people use I because that's like, you know, when you have a vector that's like 3 dimensions, I is your first dimension, and then, you know, J is your second dimension, and K is your third dimension. So usually when working with nested for loops, people will do for I as their first dimension, and then for J as their second dimension, and for K as their third dimension. And I mean, they're just arbitrary variables. You don't have to use them. That's just what programmers tend to do because they're very math oriented, and that's just what math does. It's the convention that's done. When I have to format lists, how do I get rid of quotation marks, brackets, and commas? You can iterate through the list. So if we have this list, it prints like this. We can go for I in range length L. You can do print L at I, and then that. So this will print through each thing without the commas and the square brackets. You have to loop through. I think maybe dot join works, but as you saw before, I didn't use dot join properly, and I don't want to waste time learning how to do it in front of all of you. So this is just a simple for loop. You print what you need to print, and then if you don't want it on a new line, add this end parameter. Potentially. So, I mean, we could try, right? I didn't use dot join because I failed at using it earlier. I don't know if you were here, but I did. So we're just gonna, I can try again. Expected string instance in found. So it wants a string if you're going to use dot join. So I'm converting all of them into strings now. And there they go. That's the join all printed and done properly. 1, 2, 9, 4, 25, 6. So you can do dot join, quotation marks, dot join, and then whatever you want to join, but it all has to be, every item in that list needs to be a string before you do dot join. So dot join, the list needs to be a string. The items in the list need to be a string. The list is just the list, and that's okay. But yeah, you're right. Cool. It is 8 now, and I'm tired, and I'm tired of coding. If you found this helpful, I would like to know, could you explain number 7 from the auto-graded question? In here, auto-graded style problems, my list, this one? Okay, cool. Let me get rid of this. So you have my list, which is an empty list, and then you have for I in range 5. So we know range 5 gives 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it appends I and prints from -3 until the end of the list. So, do you understand the for loop? I'm going to assume no, just in case other people don't understand as well. So it will append whatever I is, which we know I is this because range 5 gives this. It will append these numbers and then squared. So then my list will be full of, it'll be 0, 1, 4, 9, 16. So this is what my list becomes because it appends, it squares and then appends each to my list. And then it prints my list -3 on. So what it'll print is -1, -2, -3. So this is -3, 4 is -3, and it'll print this until the end of the list. So it'll print 4, 9, 16. That's what it'll print. Does that help? I kind of tried to explain it without actually like writing the code. It will print in brackets, yeah, it'll print exactly like this. And we can copy and paste the code just to prove that. There it goes. Here, let me comment this out so that you guys know that this isn't being done. Okay, cool. And that's just how negatives work. You just count as from the back where the last one is -1. So -1, -2, -3. If this could have been -4 to -2, right? In this case, it'll go from -4, which is this one, to -2, but it excludes -2, so it just prints 1 and 4. So negatives can be a little tricky, but just know it just goes from backwards. It goes from the back, and the last value is always -1, just like the first value is always 0. Okay, cool. I think I'm done now. I'm stopping the recording.